Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be listening to me from on the face of the earth. Today is October 28th, 2023, which means it is the death date of Zambia's former president, now belated president, Michael Chilufya Sata. I have had the pleasure to meet the president, Sata, in his office on April 4th, 2012. I had written a book about him, and I wanted him to know. It was not a favorite book for any reason, but it was also not an unfavorable book. I documented his rise to power. Michael Sata had vituperated reason and imaginations of the people. His rise to power was both a blessing and a credibility issue for the Zambian democratic process. It was imperative then, as it is now, that on his 9th death date, I should commemorate, howbeit alone here in my office in the center of the Canadian capital city of Ottawa. I feel and find myself very privileged to have been one of the first people to write books or a book about Chilufya Sata. Chilufya Sata, I call him by the Zambian names because this man is an instrument, a monument for Zambia's democracy. He stood for an ideal that every Zambian must cherish, an ideal that is a menace to Zambia's and Africa's progress: corruption. In this book, Allergic to Corruption, the story and the legacy of President Michael Sata of Zambia, I document his meteorite rise as well as his achievements. He did not finish his office, but Sata created a platform and set a foundation upon which many Zambian presidents must base their campaigns and philosophies. In this book, I talk about his birth and political rise, what I call the Great Journey. I nickname Sata as the Lincoln of Zambia. They have great similarities. You find them in this book. He was called King Cobra. Now, you know, one of the characteristics of King Cobra strikes. Sata, Michael Chilufya, struck. Confidence and sometimes fear. But he always stood for the truth of what is cogent to Zambian and African democracies. The end, the eradication of corruption. I talk about the man of action. If you followed the life of Michael Sata, you knew that he was a man of action. Sometimes we ululate and praise the dead, but Sata was praised even when he's alive. He came from humble backgrounds. He swept the Victoria Station in England. And when you are a sweeper in the Western countries, you are a non-entity, you are a nobody. But Sata had a vision of sweeping one of Africa's most corrupt countries, Zambia, sweeping it of its corruption. We applaud him, even if he did not finish the mandate. I had to sustain his vision in a book so that the posterity of Zambia should not forget that we have a mandate, as the living, to eradicate corruption in Zambia. I talk about Donchi Kubeba. Now that is a Zambian term. It is a Machiavellian thesis though, but it is very appropriate for African corruption inclinations because it aims at destroying corruption while it's trying not to tell them. I talked about PF policies under Michael Sata. Then I talk about his populist promises. I talk about democracy in Zambia vis-a-vis the Chinese mushrooming in Zambian communities. In this book, I give you a rationale of Chinese investments in Zambia. I'm not telling you now what it is unless and until you read this book. This book is dedicated to Michael Sata's 9th birthday, if you could call it. I met the man. I talked to the man. I told the man what my vision for Zambia would be if I was in his place. And I told him it would be exactly as he was doing, revamping the economy and destroying the venom of corruption. Michael Chilufya Sata, continue to rest in peace. Zambia, get this book. Make it one of the best books on your shelves because it talks about one of our sons, Chilufya Michael Sata. I am not political. I do not belong to the PF party. I simply an objective observer. I know that what Michael Sata stood for transcends politics. Whether you are Hikainde Hichilema, whether you are Rupia Banda or Lungu or Chiluba or Kaunda, you cannot disagree with the vision of Sata's implication when he declared allergic to corruption. Zambia must be allergic to corruption. Go everywhere books are sold, including Amazon, and get allergic to corruption and commemorate Michael Sata's 9th death day. Love you, Zambia. Bye for now.